Hi everyone, I'm Steve Stoller.
And I'm Shauna Haley, and this is Inside Plano, where we take you behind the scenes of our city.
We'll introduce you to the faces and places who help make this a great place to live.
And give us lots of reasons to love Plano. Welcome to another episode of Inside Plano, Steve Stoller.
Hello, Shauna Haley. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm actually doing even better because we're in an environment where I'm having fresh air blow on me, and it's not 30 degrees, and it's not 90 degrees. It's like a perfect day.
I think this is actually the first podcast we've done that we could call indoor-outdoor.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But it is nice to have a nice breeze coming through.
It is. It's fabulous. Well, should we get into our show today?
Yes. Last month, our mayor, John Munz, gave his State of the City address, and I'd like to just read a quote from his address. The mayor said, "As you know, infrastructure is a journey. It's never done. The prevalence of traffic cones throughout the city is a sign that we believe in the critical importance of investing in infrastructure."
Well, the mayor was not kidding. We have a lot of construction going on in the city. And so we thought that, this month might be a perfect time to talk about what we all in our office know is your favorite word, Steve. Infrastructure. Yep.
And who better to talk about our roads than our Director of Public Works, Dan Prendergast, and our Assistant Director of Public Works, Carrie Jones. And Carrie, your specialty, of course, is streets, traffic, and drainage. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, we always like to start our interviews by asking our interviewees to tell us something about themselves that we don't know. We obviously know you're the Director of Public Works. We know your role. But what do we not know about you?
So I guess on my side, not everything is infrastructure. I love music. In college, I was actually in a rock band and played drums, and we'd play local pubs in the area and whatever else. So I don't play as much as I used to at all with two young kids in the house, but that is a passion of mine.
Drums. I didn't know you were a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I'd like to hear some of your music sometime.
I'm not sure you would.
And Carrie, how about you?
All right, so I did not coordinate my outfit with Dan. I am not an Aggies fan, so I'm actually a Baylor fan, and I didn't go to Baylor, but grew up going to Baylor games, football games, basketball games, baseball games, all of that. So between that and traveling with two little kids, I don't get to travel as much either, but that's what I enjoy.
Great. Well, it's nice to get to know you both better.
Oh, this is my favorite part of the podcast, actually. I mean, I know that we go into depth of things that people are interested in, but I'm like, oh, really? Tell me more, Well, before we do jump into talking about streets and sidewalks and whatnot, we are in this indoor-outdoor space. So would you all mind telling folks where we actually are? Because we haven't been doing many of our podcasts kind of out in the field. So this is a space most people probably don't know anything about.
Yeah, so this is our streets bay at our Parkway Service Center. And so this is where all of our guys in the streets department gather in the mornings. And this is obviously where some of our material is stored and some of our equipment is stored. And so this is just on the back end of our service building.
Oh, it's pretty cool.
Well, let's just jump in with an obvious question. Why are there so many streets in Plano under construction right now?
I think the simple answer to that is the age of our infrastructure. Large areas of Plano were all built over a short period of time, and we have a lot of roads right now. They're in that 30 to 40 year mark in age, and a lot of maintenance needs to be done for that. So there's a lot of roadway projects that we're doing as part of the bond program that was passed in 2021. The residents passed a bond program for streets worth $231 million. That work has to get done within a 4 to 5 year time frame to make sure that we're ready for the next round of streets that are getting older as well. So that's really the simple answer from a streets perspective, but you also have things like franchise utilities. All these gas lines and power lines and fiber lines, they all went in around the same time frame, and they're coming due for maintenance as well. So it's not always just city work that's going on. It's franchise utilities as well, or parks department things. So a lot of work going on in the city.
So how do you all decide when a road needs to be replaced versus when a road just needs to be rehabbed and maintained? And honestly, is there a cost difference that's part of the factoring into that decision?
Sure. The main factor is the condition. So we score our streets every few years, and roads that need to be replaced have to score in a low D or F condition, and we just don't have a lot of roads like that right now. The cost to maintain a road and do the overlay for a major 6-lane thoroughfare is about $2.5 million a mile. The cost to replace a 6-lane thoroughfare is about $10 to $12 million a mile. So it wouldn't be cost effective right now to go and replace streets that are in a B, C category and spend that kind of money when it's not needed.
We've talked a lot about asphalt overlays. I affectionately refer to it as the magic carpet ride because it's such a nice, smooth ride on your car. I understand we have about 17 miles right now with many more to come.
Correct.
Why did we decide to make the move to asphalt overlays as opposed to replacing the entire concrete?
The move to asphalt overlays was a very intentional thing that we did. Back in 2017, we did a pilot project on Independence Parkway between 15th Street and Parker Road, where we had done the concrete repairs from a much larger area from Plano Parkway to Spring Creek, and then did the asphalt overlay in the middle section to see how it actually performed. That section's 5 years old now. At first, residents weren't too thrilled with the asphalt overlay, but within a month or two, they realized it was the smoothest ride in town. And then we started getting questions about when are you doing the next one. So that was part of the bond program where we talked to City Council and said, if you want to do overlays, the additional cost to do that's about $500,000 a mile. There are a lot of benefits to it. The main benefit being that it keeps water out of the ground below the roadway. I think most of us that own homes in Plano have had foundation issues. Clay soils, when they dry out, they shrink, and when they get wet, they swell. It's not good for a roadbed either. And as concrete roads age, water starts getting into those joints that allow the concrete to expand and contract when it heats and cools, and that can damage the subgrade and then reduce the lifespan of the road. So it really does preserve the pavement and help preserve the pavement condition well beyond that 30-year lifespan.
Okay, so you're going to have to forgive this very basic question that's phrased not as an engineer would say it, but it is as Shauna would say it. I am in a neighborhood where there's a lot of work going on. We're replacing a street, and we're doing a lot of rehab work as well. So it's kind of a public works and an engineering neighborhood. So the other day we noticed contractors, and I would assume they're public works employees because this felt like road maintenance. They were doing what looked like they were pressure cleaning cracks in the road and where my alley was, like my driveway was connecting to the alley. And then they went through and they put this black shiny substance in there. So now as you walk through the neighborhood, all of those cracks have this really nice, dark, black, shiny, almost tar-like liquid, but down in the cracks. What were they doing and why were they doing that?
So they start out with cleaning those joints. Those are the construction joints. And so they clean the joints out and they put a hot asphalt joint sealer back into the joints. And so that seals off any water or small debris like sand or pebbles getting in between those. And it helps when the concrete will expand or contract based on the weather. It helps those not break when those happen. And so it keeps the concrete sealed off, which will in turn extend the life of the concrete.
Hopefully no potholes in my alleyway then, right, as a result.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's important too. We didn't used to do that as part of our residential rehab projects. We'd just go through and fix the damaged concrete and that was it. Well, now we're going through and sealing the joints and the cracks to make sure that everything gets maintained, not just the pieces that are damaged at the time that we're there.
What does a typical day look like for our streets division?
So I'll do my best to summarize because I don't know if there's really a typical day. They cover so many different things, and so they start their work at 6:30 in the morning. So they start here, and they all gather together, especially the crew leaders and the supervisors, and they go through their work orders that they have for the day. So our crews are broken up into several different aspects of a construction job. So we have our saw crew, our breakout crew, our setup crew, our pour crew, and then our backfill crew. And that doesn't include the employees that do any of the right-of-way clearing for trees that are hanging low, or we have a couple of employees who specialize in the bricks. And so that's why I say it's hard to summarize a typical day because they do so many different things. But as soon as they get their assignments for the day, they go out and they move around. On average, they have 4 to 5 locations they travel to in the day, depending on what crew they're on. And so they work 10-hour days and they work through their work orders as the day goes on. It just depends on what they have for the day.
Now, we know that those crews don't do all of the road work in the city, that you hire contractors and whatnot. So can you all talk to us a little bit about how the city does manage road work within the city? I mean, sometimes we see sites sitting idle for a while. Sometimes we see an intense amount of work going on. That is a hazard of wind, y'all. So I will give you that. So how do you manage that process just to make sure that all of these projects are underway?
So we coordinate. In addition to the streets division, I also oversee our construction division. And so we coordinate to make sure that we're not overlapping our work too much. And then we also have, for those that are being handled by a contractor, we have inspectors. We have a team of inspectors that inspect that process for the construction side of all of our road work. And so they manage 4 to 5 projects at a time, and they go to each site every day, and they make sure that the contractors are doing what they're supposed to do. And they're there, they can't be there all the time because they have multiple projects, but they are there for all the major items like pouring concrete and those things.
What is the biggest challenge we face as a city when it comes to maintaining our streets, our alleys, and our sidewalks?
Do I have to give you just one? There are a lot of challenges, especially right now in the environment that we're in. I think the main challenge that we struggle with is how to phase these projects and be intentional with having the least amount of impact that we can to the public. There are a lot of projects to do, also in very similar areas. As I said, a lot of portions of the city grew at the same time frame. So when you're looking at 30 or 40-year-old roads, they're all in the same area. Like Central Plano is a big part of that, right? So you have to phase these projects in a way where you're not having an undue burden on the public, and also try to construct them in a way that leaves the maximum amount of lanes open. But you've got intersection projects to deal with, you've got Atmos projects that are going on, you've got parks projects, you've got engineering projects, and we all coordinate both internally and externally to make sure that we are trying to phase these in the right way. There's a lot. If you pull up our CIP map, you'll see how many projects are actually going on right now, and not just road projects. You've got screening wall projects, water mains, sewer mains, drainage projects. There's just a lot to do in Plano, and not a lot of time to do it, because if you wait too long to get these things done, the infrastructure keeps getting worse and worse. It doesn't just kind of stagnate. And we have things that are in decent condition now that are also eventually going to start failing, and people are going to want those things fixed as well. So it's really being intentional about how we're doing the program and making sure that we're funded the right way to be able to do the things that we need to be able to do.
Now, I remember back when I worked in construction hearing that if you let your road work get behind, you'll never catch up. So that's a huge challenge, isn't it?
We always say stay ahead of the curve. Just stay ahead. And as Mayor Munn said, it's a never-ending thing. There will be cones in the right-of-way forever. We're hoping that right now we're in a higher peak time, and we can kind of level that off some. But it's a continual renewal process that we're going through.
Is there anything else that you all would like for residents to really understand about road work? I know y'all live in the area, so you understand, you're driving the same roads. Mm-hmm. What would you want our residents to know and understand about it?
I'll say one question we get quite often is that people, when they drive through, will see and think that we're removing pavement that's not damaged. So we're just finding pavement or whatever that we want to remove. And I'll say that everything that we do is intentional. When we go through and take out pavement and put new pavement down, if it didn't look damaged, it may have had a drainage problem. Or it may not have met some kind of federal criteria like ADA compliance. And so the ramp looked fine at the corner, but didn't have the domes that you need at the end of the ramp, or have the improper slope. So there's a reason behind everything that we're doing. We have plenty of work and plenty of damaged concrete in the city to be able to remove just that. And I think some people sometimes think that we're looking for other work to do just to do it, and that is not the case at all.
Good to know. Well, we have what we call the lightning round, at least for now. We just cherry pick 10 questions that we get a lot from residents, and we're just going to go through them, and no need to go in depth. Let's just answer frequently asked questions. So first up, why do you all let contractors keep aero boards and other equipment on the roadway when no work is being performed and we don't even see an open hole in the roadway?
All right, so there are several reasons that could be going on. So one of the main reasons is we don't allow contractors on a regular basis to store materials or equipment on grassy areas. We don't want the grass to die, and so we require them to store them in the lane. And so a lot of times you may not see a hole, but there will be equipment or material being stored in that hole. There's also cure time for the concrete that has recently been poured. We make them, it has to sit cured for at least 3 days before we can open it up to traffic. But even beforehand, there are saw cuts that they do that now that we do the pavement removal process different instead of the breaker, we will saw cut smaller sections, which make it a little bit more dangerous to drive on if there's not a good solid surface there. So there are multiple reasons why you may not see an open hole, but work is still going on.
Here's another. Oh, I'm sorry, Dan, you have something to add?
I was going to add too, sometimes it's a franchise utility conflict. So the contractors can't go bring in all this traffic control, find a conflict and take it all out there, bring it all back. When they're out there, they want to be out there. And we also don't always know the direct schedule that the franchise utility has to go remove the conflict as well. So there can be coordination issues between us and Atmos or Encore or whatever that can slow things down.
Okay.
Here's another frequent question we hear from the community. During winter storms, why do we put down sand instead of salt?
So it's actually a mixture of sand and salt. Mostly sand, but a little bit of salt is mixed in. And so the sand provides traction on top of the ice. But depending on the type of precipitation we're receiving, the salt will actually help melt the ice a little quicker. So during this last event a few weeks ago, you may have seen intersections that melted quicker than the rest of the roadways. That's due to the salt that's mixed in with the sand that we put down.
All right. It's also a winter storm question. Third year in a row, we've had ice storms. Isn't it time for Plano to go ahead and say, we need some snow plows and we need some better equipment to deal with it?
So winter equipment is very expensive, and it's a high dollar investment that really we only have on average 3 to 5 days a year to deal with. And so the equipment that we use to spread sand and salt is equipment that we utilize on a daily basis. There are dump trucks, our flatbeds, things like that. So it's not a large investment for maintenance and repair for one piece of equipment that we would use just 3 to 5 days out of the year.
I'll add to that too. I've actually looked and seen what cities up north need to be able to maintain their streets during the winter. I know the city of Rockford, which is smaller than us, has fewer lane miles, uses 150 snowplows to be able to clear those streets. If we were to keep 150 snowplows here, there's no space to do that. There's also no contractors around the area that have 150 snowplows to go do that either. So there just aren't the resources that you need to maintain all of our streets. So we focus on bridges, intersections, and our facilities that are critical. And that ends up being about 20% of our overall major arterial network. So 200 miles is what the entire network is. 20% of that is what we actually put down sand salt on. And that sand salt is stored in bins out here as well. And we have a kind of a finite amount that we can store throughout the year. So cities here just aren't built to be able to maintain every street when it ice is over.
Some of the repairs we make to roads are considered patchwork. Why do patchwork repairs as opposed to replacing an entire section?
Really, it comes down to what I talked about, not removing concrete that's not damaged. If the concrete's in good shape, you're saving money by not removing it. And so like if you look at Coit Road that we just did recently, from Parker all the way up to 121, I think the total amount of concrete that we replaced on there was around 20 to 30% of the overall concrete in the road. So that's why you're at that $2.5 million a mile to repair and overlay versus $10 to $12 million a mile to actually replace the entire street.
All right, so not that we ever have people make mistakes while driving, but if someone were to change the lane and accidentally fall into some of that concrete that hasn't fully cured, it's laned off, who's responsible for the damage?
So it does happen, and it has happened recently. But so typically our stance with our contractor is it is their responsibility to re-pour that section at their expense. Now they have the option to file a police report or a claim on the driver's insurance to recoup the money that they've lost. So it can go that way as well. So it's either the contractor or the driver.
All right.
Now we have an app called Fix It, and you can report potholes, problems with streets, roadways, alleys, a whole gamut of things. I've actually used it, and I know the answer to this next question because I know it works, and I know you respond. But a lot of people want to know if they put something on the Fix It app, do you guys really respond to their requests?
We do. We respond to every request that comes in. Sometimes it's not a personal reach out to the requester. Sometimes it's, I need a pothole filled, and so we just go out, fill the pothole, and the requester will receive a notification that the pothole has been fixed. And so, but if it's a request that's a little more complicated or we have additional questions, we can reach out to the requester to ask additional questions. And so some people may receive an actual call from us or message through Fix It. Or it could just be that they receive a notification that the problem that they've turned in has been fixed.
So also related to fix it, because this is one of those more complex things, since City of Plano owns sidewalks, how long does it typically take when somebody puts in a sidewalk? Because the expectation, you guys fill potholes really fast, but sidewalks maybe not so much. So what's the average look like there?
So right now we're running, it depends on the severity of the sidewalk, to be honest. And so if it's a high trip hazard, 2 inches or higher, we do put that on a higher priority list. And so those will get done faster. But on average, probably about 6 to 8 months right now for a sidewalk to be repaired. We have hired a horizontal saw cutting contractor that can help eliminate some of those smaller trip hazards quicker. So that way it keeps our sidewalk contracts a little bit more manageable. So, but right now it's about 6 to 8 months.
I'll say too, sometimes the challenge with the sidewalk request is you go and repair one, and then everybody else in the neighborhood sees that, and we get 10 more requests behind that. And so sometimes fixing them actually generates more, and that can mean it's a longer time for us to get back there and fix the new locations that came up.
Gotcha.
Some people will drive through a construction zone, and it's not uncommon to see maybe, I don't know the actual numbers, you see a handful of people actually working, and then you see others that are standing around and not working. People don't understand there's actually a reason for that, and I'd like you to explain what that is.
There could be several reasons for that. Typically on a crew, when you're in there digging dirt and whatever else, that's very hard work, and you can't work continuously, so you may have people kind of subbing out and helping each other out as well. So the ones that are resting are standing up watching the work and also making sure things are safe, and the ones that are working are doing the work that you maybe either can't see in the hole or just see doing the work on the street. You also have a foreman who's in charge of safety as well. You have an operator who may have already done the digging part for now, but now they're going to stay there and wait till it's time for them to start digging again. You may have a dump truck that's about to show up, and people are ready to work on that as well. There could be many things that don't seem like they're happening that actually are when you drive by a construction site, because I know it could be frustrating to see that.
So you told us that sometimes people think that we're tearing up perfectly good concrete, but another perception is that you're tearing up the same exact spot of road over and over. Why is that?
Well, the goal is not to do that. So I think when people see that, there are some times we have smaller contracts that we have for isolated areas called requirements contracts, and we may have something that was called in, and we go in there and don't have the capacity to go fix Alma Road from here to here, right? But in this one area that's really bad, we'll go fix that now and leave the rest until we have a larger contract come through and do everything. And so it looks like we're fixing the same section of road multiple times, but not the same concrete. And it's really based on, do we need to respond now? Because if we respond now and go fix everything, we'd never get anything done. So sometimes you have to prioritize the severe work first.
I mentioned earlier that the asphalt overlays are like a magic carpet ride. What is it about the asphalt that makes it seem so much smoother when you're driving on it as opposed to driving on concrete?
So that is one of the benefits. One of those challenges when you just do concrete work is the crews have to hand pour it. And we get comments that after we fixed the road, it didn't really feel like it because it didn't drive that well after that. What the asphalt does is provide a continuous surface on top of the concrete. It's smooth. It also masks the joints in the concrete that I mentioned you need for the concrete to expand and contract. So you don't hear that thump, thump, thump that you get for a lot of concrete streets as well. So it really does feel quieter. I know our residents that live right up against our major streets that we've overlaid really like the new surface because it is quieter for their backyards and sleeping at night and things like that.
Dan, Carrie, thank you so much for joining us on our podcast today. Really appreciate it. It's fun getting to know you guys better, having the opportunity to talk to you. And really, it's a complex thing to repair and maintain our roads when you have 72 square miles of the city of Plano, and you guys do a fabulous job, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Well, that's a wrap for another Inside Plano. As always, if you enjoy the podcast, give us feedback at askplano@plano.gov, or if you have a department or a city issue that you'd love us to dig more into, we'd love to hear from you. So until next time, thanks, Steve, for another great session.
Thanks, Sean.
And that's it for our Inside Plano. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did doing it.
If you have any comments or suggestions, send them to us at askplano@plano.gov. Bye.
Talk to you next month. The Inside Plano podcast is brought to you by the City of Plano.